Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Colin Campbell, and I'm the editor for JAR. And it's a real pleasure to be here today and welcome you all to our webinar. Meet the editors of the special issue on search, advertising, and AI. Today, we have a really nice agenda and it's really practical. Our goal is to help you gauge your fit, sharpen your ideas, and avoid common missteps before you submit to this special issue. The team is here and they're going to go through and share their big ideas behind the issue, how they're thinking about AI-mediated search and zero-click environments, and what they're hoping to see in their submissions. We're going to wrap at the end with a Q&A, so you feel free to throw in questions at any point throughout the webinar as well. Anything related to topics or framing or review expectations or the submission process as well. And I'm super delighted to be here and be joined by the full guest editorial team for the special issue. We've got Kirsten Cowan, Feng, Seth Ketron, and Aidin Namin. Kirsten Cowan is a senior lecturer in marketing at the University of Edinburgh Business School. She's also JAR Associate Editor, and her research centers on consumer judgment and decision making in digital and AI-enabled environments, including social media and website design. Thank you so much for being a part of the special issue and being here, Kirsten.
Thank you.
And next up, we've got Yang Feng. She's an associate professor of advertising with a specialization in AI at the University of Florida. She's also a JAR associate editor. Thank you as well for helping out with that. And she's also a faculty affiliate with the Consortium on Trust in Media and Technology. Her research examines how AI is changing advertising strategy and consumer response, including issues like automation and AI aversion. Very topical and relevant for the special issue. Thank you for being here, Yang. Next up, we've got Seth Ketron. He's an associate professor of marketing at the Opus College of Business at the University of St. Thomas. His research focuses on information processing and sensory marketing with a strong track record in virtual and mixed reality and retailing. Thank you as well for joining us, Seth. And finally, we've got Aidin Namin. He's an associate professor of marketing analytics in the College of Business Administration at Loyola Marymount University. He's a modeler by training and focuses on analytics-driven work in digital marketing, pricing, retailing, and consumer behavior. He brings deep expertise on measurement and evidence, which is critical for this area as search and ad performance become more AI-shaped. So thank you so much for being here as well, Aidin. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team and have them go through and provide some more information on the special issue. I also want to remind everybody as well too that this is being recorded and we'll put it up on YouTube as well too, so you can refer to it later as well.
Thank you so much, Colin, for hosting this webinar and facilitating this relevant and very timely special issue in Journal of Advertising Research. And also thank you so much to my fellow special issue guest editors. I know this is going to be such a fresh and exciting special issue, and I'm so excited to guest edit this with all of you. So today, here's our agenda. Welcome everyone to the webinar, and we hope that you find it useful for shaping up your ideas. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a bit about the ideas that we have for the special issue, why this special issue, why the call, before I hand it over to Aidin, who'll discuss the promise of AI in information search. Yang will then pick it up on emergent trends and the future of AI in search. And then Seth is going to wrap it up with the presentation for just a few ideas, potential topics, and final points before we head into the Q&A. So let me start with why the special issue exists in the first place. Why this call? Well, if you look back over the past century, marketing research, psychology research, communication research, we've published hundreds, thousands of papers on information search. It's not a new topic. It's one of the most established ideas in decision making. We've been studying how people search for information, look for information long before the internet, long before Google, and certainly long before AI. But there's a good reason for that. Information search is one of the most important stages of the decision-making process. Historically, a lot of our foundational work on search made a key distinction between internal and external search. And if we don't understand how that takes place, we really don't understand how decisions are being made in the first place. And from an advertising standpoint, knowledge of these search patterns is absolutely essential for advertising to be effective. Where do consumers look for information? Which touch points do they look through first? How do they move sequentially through search results, ads, social content, branded sites? All of this is determined by their search preferences and determines whether searches are going to be seen and how effective they're going to be, whether they're going to be trusted, and whether they ultimately influence behavior. Now, historically, search required effort. Consumers had to actively go to a store, open a catalog, browse a website, type a query into a search page. Search was something that people did consciously, deliberately. And because of that, traditional theories related to information search and planning were built around this idea that search is costly, it's intentional, and it's relatively transparent. So previously, we didn't assume that consumers always engaged in that external aspect of search. So that's the acquisition of information from other sources like memory. So in other words, we knew that a lot of decisions were made just by relying on simply what people knew and understood, what their beliefs were, their prior attitudes, prior experiences. And so external search, going to look for new information, was effortful and therefore limited. A lot of theories assumed and explicitly implied that people would avoid external searching at all costs. But when this landscape started to change, the internet dramatically eased effort related to search. So suddenly going from no information and only internal searches to a plethora and this wide swath of information became just a matter of a few clicks. And for advertisers and brands, this gave rise to SEO as a core capability. If consumers were searching online, then understanding and shaping how consumers encountered information in search results became an essential part of advertising strategy. But what we're experiencing now goes well beyond that. AI is revolutionizing search. Instead of typing a query and searching through a list of links and even sponsored results, we increasingly interact with systems that interpret our intent, predict what we might want, and generate answers for us. Search is becoming conversational, personalized, passive even, embedded, and more invisible. This has profound implications for advertising. If AI systems mediate what consumers see and even which options we're aware of in the first place, then our classic assumptions about information search and our classic advertising tools that we use really needs to be revamped. That's at the heart of this special issue, to rethink search, advertising, and AI in an integrated way, grounded in both theory and emergent practice. So ultimately, we aim to inspire thought-leading research that pushes the boundaries of research on AI and information search and advertising. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Aidin, who's going to walk you through the promise of AI in information search.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Welcome, everybody. It's an honor and pleasure to be here and hopefully have some exciting presentation and engage with everybody in the audience. So just talking a little bit more in terms of how advertising has changed in terms of what we call a traditional online advertising versus the role of AI in it. So when it comes to, looking for things online, probably for most people, Google might be the first thing that comes to their mind. And the reality is that just last year, nearly 90% of the market share in terms of online searches were done through Google. So Google still remains to be the major player in this market. That said, we are witnessing some significant changes in terms of how AI and chatbots are gaining more and more market share. For instance, we have witnessed more than 700% increase in people using AI and chatbots for searching, and the market share for this category has grown to nearly 1/10 of the total market share. And what we expect in the future year is that more of the market share is going to be shifted towards using AI for search compared with traditional searches. Now, one of the reasons that many users have started, at least to show interest in terms of using AI to do their search, is zero-click queries. So basically, you just search for something, you find your answer right there. In most cases, without the need to click on any links versus in traditional advertising, you search for something, then the user has to click on the link and review the information themselves to see if that adequately addresses what they were looking for, or additional search might be required. As Kristen mentioned earlier, so we are right now dealing with the situation of generative engine optimization, GEO, and that is gaining more and more attraction. Now, one of the things when using AI for search, and that might be of interest for research paper, is that AI models need to trust certain brands. So how does this trusting take place? What models can be used there? What processes are there? Whether these processes might be considered fair, unfair, trusted or not. These are some of the things that you might be interested in to think about them. Uh, the research shows that 40% of Americans are using AI on monthly basis, and this number is expected to increase over time. Another thing that we are observing is that when people are using AI to conduct a search, they are significantly more engaged compared with using traditional searches. Now, why this is important in general, especially for this special issue, is that basically the expectation is that the role of AI in search is going to be increasing significantly over the next few years, especially with the arrival of techniques such as natural language processing, which enables computers to act like human beings, to process data, to make conclusions, and to provide a summary of whatever information they are able to generate or find. And this is very quickly expanding into not just text, but also other forms of data, such as, images, videos, and audio files. So these are some of the changes that are all happening, and they're happening in a pretty fast pace. The other aspect of it that might be interesting for marketers is the impact of using AI for search in terms of purchase engagement or purchase intention or brand engagement. Research shows that when consumers are identifying or finding a retailer through the AI, they are more likely to get engaged with the brand, and also they are expected to have a higher likelihood for their purchase intention. So using AI as search has direct implications in terms of brand engagement, purchase intention, which eventually can get translated into sales and revenue for companies and firms. Now I'm going to pass it to Yang to talk about some of the emerging trends in this domain.
Thank you so much, Aidin, for talking about the promise of AI in information search. So now let's look at some emergent trends. First, the nature of search has been changed by the rise of AI. So traditionally, we see that users can use their search queries and to get those information from search engine, and search engine can provide them with a list of ranked search results, and users can basically evaluate the information and pull some valuable information from the results. But now we see this pull mode has been transformed into the push mode, whereas AI can actually push some generated results such as summary, shortlists, and recommendations for users to consider easily. And second, we see that because of AI's automation and intelligence, consumers can delegate their decision-making to AI and let AI basically search for information, summarize the information, and make decisions on their behalf. And third is that because of that AI, the rise of AI, we see this human AI interaction, this new relationship that will not only focus on utilitarian perspectives, such as the functional benefits, but because many AI has this conversational nature and interactive nature. So basically, consumers can also get social and emotional benefits from this new relationship. And lastly, we see that because AI can generate the ready-to-use information for consumers to use, and so it's more efficient and fast. However, those generated information may not be that in-depth, so the information can be shallow. So looking forward, we see that traditional search results may no longer be the primary touch point, like Aidin mentioned about the zero-click phenomenon. So those search results provided by the search engine may not be clicked by consumers, as they may rely on AI's generated results. So that basically means that brands, they need to think about how to structure their information for new technologies like answer engines, generative engines, and the other overall generative experience to consider and trust their brand information so that they can put the brand information as part of their generated results, such as their summary, their shortlist, and their recommendations. And also with this agentic commerce phenomenon, so where AI can serve as a dedicated agent. And so consumers basically can use AI to make their decisions. That basically means that brands, they will no longer just target consumers directly, but they also have to think about AI as another target audience to reach out to their consumers. So advertisers and brands, they have to make their way into those AI platforms. For example, they have to think about how to place their brand information and embed them into the search results generated by AI. For example, using sponsored information and place them within the results. And overall, that means that we need to rethink about the consumer decision journey. Traditionally, the journey starts with consumers' needs, and then they do the information search, evaluate alternatives, and make their decision. But now with the rise of AI, so AI may trigger their needs and motivate them to think about new needs and also provide information for them to use. And so consumers can take less effort to do the search and evaluate alternatives. And now I'm going to hand over to Seth to talk about some potential topics.
Howdy, y'all. Thanks to Colin, Kirsten, Yang, and Aidin for all of their wonderful comments. And now, of course, as Mike said, I'll be talking about some potential topics. So, like we've been saying, AI has been super disruptive to search, and that's really cool. Disruption is awesome for us as researchers because that means there's so many different things that we can look at. There's new phenomena, there's changes to existing phenomena, so many different things that you could examine. This is not an exhaustive list, so if you're thinking about a topic or something comes up that's not listed here, that's not going to mean that we're not going to look at it, of course, but these are just some ideas to get you started. So, how can advertisers leverage AI and zero-click searches to reach target audiences? So we've talked about, how this is shifted to where, you can make a purchase without even having to go to a website. What does this look like in advertising? How does AI really shape or shift the consumer journey, and how can it change experiential marketing? A big piece of this is how are people thinking about AI? What are the affective kinds of processes that are underlying it? So looking at those psychological mechanisms would be really important. Are there any cultural or contextual differences that, segments might look at AI differently, even if it does the exact same thing? Are segments responding to or using it differently based on some of those differences? How is AI shifting the balance between marketer and non-marketer controlled sources of information? Of course, we've talked about marketer and non-marketer controlled sources of information for quite some time, because with customer reviews and the third-party websites, that volume of information is greatly increased. But now with AI, once again, it's being disrupted. So what is that looking like? Talking about AI speeding up the process. Exactly what is that impact? How much faster does search get? Or, are there even cases where search might slow down in specific situations? Locus of control. So how does it shift, my feeling as a consumer of being in control of the process versus ceding some of that control to an AI agent? What does that look like in terms of autonomy? Personalized search experiences and privacy trade-offs, ethical implications. Of course, we've all had conversations or heard conversations happening around, is AI really, what are the ethical concerns around using information that may have been shared with an engine without someone's express consent? If I giving up personal information in search as a consumer, and maybe I'm not necessarily fully aware of what's happening. What are all the implications around that? Pulling in that relationship piece, the more human-like or anthropomorphic interactions that you might have with AI, and forming, even a friendship, so to speak, with an AI search engine, and how is that affecting this whole process of search? What are AI interfaces going to look like? I mean, right now we all have pretty decent mental models of what a ChatGPT might look like, or some other, AI search engine, it's an AI engine, but how could these interfaces potentially change? You think about all kinds of different emergent media. Is there, for example, we were chatting a little bit about virtual reality or VR earlier. Is there something in a platform like VR that AI and search could potentially be shifted in that interface? Or is there another interface? Could it be AR? Could it be some other technology? Transparency and explainability for trust and regulatory compliance. So, of course, as AI has moved very quickly, this has drawn attention from people concerned about, how should the regulatory environment evolve to protect consumer rights. That, of course, differs from one country to the next. As we know, some places in the world are much more adamant about protecting consumer rights than others. So what does that look like? Integrating AI across different platforms. So if you really want to have a seamless experience with AI, what does that look like? We've talked about omni-channel experiences and the fact that omni-channel is supposed to be seamless. Well, AI might come in and disrupt that process. So what should that look like? And then, are there specific metrics or benchmarks, or how do we measure effectiveness around all of this? So that would guide, of course, advertisers and marketers in making decisions about where to place their resources. Okay, some additional final points to consider. If you have any questions, our email addresses are listed here. My co-editors work at institutions that make email addresses easy. I'm at an institution that decides to use 4 letters and random numbers. So there you go. But these are our email addresses. Reach out with us at any point if you'd like. To submit your work, this is the link. And then, of course, the link to the JAR website. We will be taking submissions until the 7th of September this year, so you got some time, but as we know, time goes very fast, so don't rest on your laurels. We are taking any and all methods, so anything from conceptual to experiments, survey work, qualitative, any sort of analytical or empirical modeling papers, all the above. Mixed methods, doesn't matter. The focus, of course, needs to be on AI and search. So don't submit a paper that doesn't fit within the scope of the special issue, of course, but we are agnostic to the methods used. Length of submissions generally is going to run between 6,000 and 7,000 words, excluding references and web appendices. If you're having trouble getting everything to fit into that range, remember, web appendices are your friend. So put anything there that might be expanded information, but not necessarily germane to the core of the story, okay? How can you make your paper relevant for the future? How will this work that you're doing change the way advertisers think? So what is the practical angle? You want to keep both of these questions in mind as you work, right? Theory and practice, but especially, of course, this needs to offer some insights for advertisers to actually put these things into practice, right? So if you got a paper that's, let's say, heavily psychological, that's fine, but what are the practical implications? And if that doesn't come through very clearly, then you want to work on that and make sure it does before you submit to the special issue. And again, if you're not sure, if you got a particular topic, you're like, I don't really know if this fits, or you have a data set, or you're like, this is kind of what I'm thinking, but I want to make sure, reach out and ask us. We're happy to let you know, like, this sounds like a good fit, or think more about this, or do that. Of course, we can't provide specific comments. We can't do a pre-review for you or anything like that, but we are happy to help guide you in terms of fit for the special issue. And I believe that brings us to the end. So now I'll
thank you, Seth. Can I just add one more thing quickly?
Yeah.
So when submitting the papers, because this journal is really emphasizes practice and has a large readership that are practitioners, and even a lot of the reviewers themselves are practitioners contributing toward the journal, this has to have relevance. I would advise against submitting something with a single survey or a single experiment, but there should be either mixed methods, or there should be sequential, or even a large data set that shows a process, shows cause and effect would be great. But a single survey or a single experiment, you would need to add more than a single study to submit to JAR, just overall beyond the special issue.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for that reminder, Kirsten. And I also wanted to throw a note in as well, too, because we just, I think, updated it today. The submissions will open on June 1st as well. So if you're curious as to when they're going to open, it's June 1st. It'll go live on the submission portal. Cool. So we'll turn it over to questions. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those in the Q&A box so they can take a look and address them. I think we've got one already there. Yeah.
Okay, this one is an interesting question. What is your take on experimental manuscripts treating AI agents as subjects of the experiment? Is that considered a valid data source, or do you emphasize human participants? I think this is a really good question. I think do the results that you're able to obtain from this type of experimental study, would the findings be relevant for advertising audiences and advertising practitioners? I think that would be part of the answer here. And then going beyond just a single experiment would also be part of evolving this idea. I don't know if anyone else has anything to contribute to this question.
Yes, I also would like to emphasize the ground truth. Using AI agents without having the human participant as the bar can sometimes be risky. So it's important to validate the results from the AI agents can be applied really to your target audiences. I think that's really important.
Okay, I've marked that one as answered.
We'll just
Do
give
we
another
have any
minute or
other
two.
questions?
Yeah, I guess you've done a really nice job going through and describing what you're looking for and describing what kind of type of articles are good fits for JER. So maybe they've all been answered. Who knows?
We're just that perfect. We got another one here. You mentioned accepting conceptual papers. Can you please share more details about the expectations around such papers? So I can start, and then if anybody else wants to add. Anytime you have a conceptual paper, of course, we want to see that you're advancing theory or understanding in some way. Now, of course, when you marry up a conceptual paper with a very practice-heavy paper, there are some challenges there, just because conceptual papers tend to be more about building or advancing theory and the way that we understand things kind of at a higher level. But, are you doing something new, or are you just rehashing what's been done before and not really extending our understanding of advertising practice, right? So is this going to be, if it's more of a state-of-the-art, literature review kind of conceptual paper, that's not going to advance our understanding of practice as much as, let's say, well, AI and search have not been examined using this theoretical lens that brings a new perspective to this entire phenomenon. And so if you have a paper like that where you're saying, okay, well, based on this theoretical lens, we can generate propositions, we can guide future, decisions around practice or future research. Where is this going, right? That's going to add more than just where have we been. We were chatting about that a little bit earlier as well. But the more newness theoretically that you can bring and the more insights you can bring in terms of how practice should shift, being very crystal clear about how practice should shift. So not just, this is going to change everything, but specifically, what should advertisers do? What should marketers do? What should consumers do? What should policymakers do, right? So think about all the different angles of practice that this new conceptual lens could bring. My 2 cents.
That's some great advice. I would just also add that as a reviewer and as an AE and as a proponent of conceptual articles, I think a lot of issues that can make or break a conceptual article is knowing where your contribution is. And being able to communicate that contribution and the positioning very, very clearly. So what I find helpful in those cases is really knowing Deborah McInnes's article like the back of my hand, that 2011 Journal of Marketing paper on framing conceptual contributions. Know where and how and why that contribution is there and matters.
That's just a fabulous paper. Even if you're not going to do a conceptual paper for this SI, you definitely got to read that paper because it's great.
Very true. Yeah. Cool. Final chance then. Any other questions folks might have who are attending? Cool. Well, like they said, definitely if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to them and email them. They're a very friendly bunch and they're definitely open to, getting questions by email. Do you want to tackle this one too, or yeah?
Why AI is not allowed in research? Can we clarify that question a bit? Like, what do you mean by that?
I'm not sure if it's around synthetic data or agents or things like that, but I think we're definitely open to different forms of AI and research. I think the question is just sort of like how it's done, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. Yeah.
I guess AI is not allowed in generating ideas because then it takes away from the authorship. Who is the creator? Who is the originator of the piece of research? Is it you or is AI? And does AI really deserve the first author of the paper? So the ideas have to come from an individual human to be that is represented as you are being represented as the author and the generator of the idea. I think there's other instances where people use Grammarly and other AI sources in order to do edits. In that case, I know that there's more transparency required in the use of AI. So if you're using AI to do any type of edits, then including that in the title page, I think is a great idea. I don't think that disqualifies people from submitting. But I think you have to ask, what is the role in AI in generating the research, the idea, the method, or the study? And is that relatable, like Ying said, to the target audience or to consumer behavior? So AI is not disallowed, and there's other papers that I've seen that use AI in creative ways to look at data, but again, it's very clear and transparent in the manuscript.
We're definitely very open to AI. We're curious about how it can be used and how it can be leveraged for advertisers. And I'm going to do a shameless plug, but we've got a special session coming up at the AAA's conference in Austin in March. We've got some of the people here on that as well too, and we'll be talking more about how AI can be used in research and how it can be useful for that beyond just writing, but even for ideation and stuff like that. And I think it's really I think from my perspective, it's just a tool. It's another tool, and the question is, how are we as authors able to use that tool to create better content, better research, better findings? But exactly as Kirsten said, we're still responsible for the stuff that we're sending in and we're publishing. Awesome. So very forward-looking final question there. So I want to thank you all for coming and doing the special issue and guest editing it, and secondly, coming here and providing such great advice to all the potential authors. We'll put this up on YouTube, so it'll be available for people to view there. And as I said, feel free to reach out if you got questions or want to bounce ideas off them or get feedback on different things you're thinking about. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.